never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
What's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Do you not understand that they are that way because you're Joe Flacco?
And you just like to discredit things that people deserve credit for.
That you can't possibly be expected to defend that.
Talk about the game, Sam.
So,
who cares about what people think about us?
Yeah, I like football season, and all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo here with Sam Monson, and today we are breaking down Sam's one and only mock draft here.
Certainly first. Well, depending on what you class the one we did on the podcast last week. That was an us thing.
Well, it's Mock Draft Monday over at PFF.com, and Sam's is live, and we're gonna rip it apart here live on the podcast. Thanks to everybody for tuning in on YouTube and of course in podcast world. It's been a record month for us, Sam. We're just, growing, and we appreciate all of the new listeners. If you are new, and if you're just here for draft season, hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to podcasts, because we're here all off season, and of course next year as well.
Yeah, you're not going to give us your takeaway from the Masters coming off, Monday Masters weekend.
No.
Okay.
No.
That's fine.
I didn't have time to watch the Masters.
You know what my takeaway from the Masters is?
Did you nap?
Did I nap? I don't believe
Oh,
so.
you're supposed to take naps during the Masters.
Oh, no, I didn't do that.
Okay, what's your takeaway?
Hats are like a cheat code for baldness.
Okay.
All those people walking around. This is what I'm saying, right? This is why I think of this rather than you. Although, you're getting there. You put a hat on, and the guy looks 10 years younger, and then right at the end, you finish the round, the hat comes off. You're like, oh, God. It's like he looks like me.
You could be...
this is the Matt Hasselbeck thing.
There's a mighty roar from the control room here.
Matt Hasselbeck could shave 10 years off his age towards the end of his career when he put a baseball cap on the sideline. Go to the sideline, baseball cap comes on, like, oh, look at that. Fresh-faced 24-year-old over there.
Here, why don't you throw on a Western and Southern helmet?
The cap comes off when the helmet has to go on. You're like, Matt Hasselbeck is like 45 years old. Is it too late for me to become a hat guy?
No.
Just
again, we have a whole lot of new viewers and new listeners.
Yeah,
well, the new listeners definitely don't know.
That's what I'm saying. I could put a cap on. The new listeners would never know.
Why don't you do it? Become a baseball cap
I got
guy.
a new Ireland cap. I'll bring it in.
Perfect.
And on we go.
You're going to be wearing hats all the time now.
Yeah.
I have no Masters takeaway. I have too many kids. I didn't get to watch it.
Yeah.
Used to enjoy the Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, you need a lot of free time for the Masters as an entity, and you don't have free time because you have kids.
Yeah, we have people within the company, though, that, Masters shirts and cakes and celebrations.
And they got a lot of free time.
They don't have kids yet.
No kids.
Yeah.
No wife. Perfect.
So they're enjoying it.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's rip apart your mock draft here.
Sweet.
Let's let the people get in here. Tweet it out. Tell people to come make fun of your mock draft.
It's already tweeted, as is the live show thing.
Great.
This thing that we're doing now.
So you did your mock, and the question I always ask is this what you would do, or is this a prediction? Because 99% of mock drafts are a prediction. I was one of the first people, I think, to just do what I would do. That used to be like
claiming that as a thing.
I am. Like Todd McShay used to do it, but like 1 out of his 6, he's like, I'm really changing it up. This is a what I would do mock draft. That's the only way.
It's usually been the way PFF has done mocks, because our whole thing is.
I think Renner started to flip it into like his.
Well, Renner's always been led by the pack a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, he's a follower for sure.
Yeah. But generally PFF shtick is, well, look, we've actually analyzed all these things, all these players, not just watched the tape. We've ground it fine, Steve, into dust.
Fine ground tape. Yep.
And therefore, we're able to tell you with a slightly different thing, with a different slant what's going to happen. So we're predicting the outcome of these players and therefore telling you what we would do as GMs in all these mock drafts. So, but when you asked me the question, was this that type of mock? I was like, ish. Because I always start off like that. And like, yeah, this is going to be what I would do as GM for each one of these teams. And then you reach like a certain team and you're like, well, what they would do in this spot is so obvious. And it's kind of fun. So I'm just going to roll with it. Like, why would I go, well, we know what they would do. It's really clear, but I'm going to go in a different direction. So there's sometimes, and you can see if you can spot them as we go, where you're like, yeah, this is just what they would do.
This is just what they would do. Okay. So it's over at PFF.com. Your hybrid mock, what you would do, and a little bit of what teams would do. Let's get into it. Starting at 1 and 2, no surprise.
Right.
By the way, my mock draft comes out next Monday, so we'll tear apart my mock next Monday. Before we get started, actually, do we want to do a live mock draft with the viewers this week?
What did the people say? You pitched it
A lot of people said yes. I think if we hype it up over the next couple days, mock draft with us on YouTube live.
So next week is
Thursday.
your mock draft, and then we have one more Monday before the actual draft, right?
Correct.
So we could do it then.
You want to do it the week of?
Yeah.
I feel like there's going to be a lot of news and buzz to maybe talk about that.
Then we have the Thursday pod. That's the morning of. So if we do it on the Monday.
Okay.
Anyway, this is housekeeping.
It is.
Keep this.
But I just want to see how many more people are really interested in us doing a live mock draft with you. Mine will be out next Monday, though.
Yes.
Okay. So you're going Trevor Lawrence number 1 with the Jags.
Yeah.
And Zach Wilson number 2 to the Jets. No big surprise there.
We fleshed this out before. I think you can make the case that Zach Wilson has a higher ceiling, is maybe a better player, certainly has a higher single-season grade than we've seen from Trevor Lawrence. On the other hand, if this is your job, if everything is on the line for you, which one are you more confident in? I think you have to lean Trevor Lawrence. Greater sample size, just no real flaws. There's no absence of data in a specific area. You know, the Zach Wilson has questions about his game. Lawrence really doesn't. So, yeah.
By the way, we had somebody go through on the PFF MDS, the mock draft simulator, and actually try to force a trade from 2 to 1, right? The Jets and the Jaguars.
Saw that. And it took like everything.
It made Mike Ditka blush, is what I would say. It made
at least you ended up with a quarterback at the end of it. Dick only ended up with Ricky Williams.
He did. Oh, he did.
In a wedding dress.
Because I'm weird, I was watching the 99 draft the other day.
Yeah.
And rehashing some of that. And Ditka is within minutes is on ESPN smoking a cigar.
Yeah.
Talking about how he's going to go to the golf course. Like, my draft is done. I'm off to the golf course. I got Ricky Williams. I got my guy. I'm off. And then they went 3 and 13. And he got fired.
Yeah. The reasoning behind why he did that, the ability to just light up a cigar and go to the golf course, I probably reached single digits of percentage points, right? Like, why he did it. Well, if I set fire to all my draft picks right now and just get Ricky Williams, I can be out of here.
Yeah, 2 days of golf. Because remember, it used to be a 2-day event, right. Saturday and Sunday. You got your weekend back.
Like, there's at least, it's reached into single-digit percentage points that the reason he did it was for that.
Yeah, it's late April. It's probably one of the first good weekends of the year.
Now, I don't think it gets to double-digit points, but I think it's definitely single digits.
Oh, it was in there. Yeah. It was definitely in there. And, you can't miss on draft picks if you don't make them. So
that's very true.
There's another
unless
benefit.
You count all of that being one. Yeah, anyway.
Maybe you can. The mock draft sim at PFF.com took the entire Jets' next couple drafts in order to trade up for Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
To answer our question from the Crazy Draft Theories podcast last week, that I would do. I would give up Trevor Lawrence if you told me if I'm the Jags. If I'm the Jags, I would give up the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah.
If you gave me number 2
and everything
from 2021, 22, and 23.
Yeah.
I don't think Trevor Lawrence is worth,
that
20 draft picks,
right.
including the one right below number 1, number 2. So, you also went at number 3, Justin Fields.
Yeah.
To the San Francisco 49ers.
The draft starts at 3.
We debated this last week as well. We don't need to rehash all of the quarterback decisions here. Are we believing? I think Eric Eager is going to write about this week, that this might be the best bet in the draft. So Fields to the Niners.
I went and rewatched those 3 quarterbacks that are in the options of this: Justin Fields, Trey Lance, and Mac Jones. I like all 3 actually in a weird way. I think that Mac Jones has a real chance to succeed, to thrive, to be a very good NFL quarterback, in spite of the fact that his physical tools are not amazing. I just would not, for the life of me, bet 3 first-round picks on it, which is what the 49ers would be doing if they made that pick. Trey Lance, so almost before I'd seen any of him, I had this sort of picture in my mind of, raw, toolsy quarterback that might be a good bet to succeed because all the toolsy quarterbacks have kind of worked out quite well. And in a weird way, I think that's exactly what he is, but I've come to that conclusion via like a weird windy road. Like when Ben Stockwell was watching him, I can't call him director of analysis because he isn't anymore, but I've forgotten what his actual title is. It's more ridiculous than director of analysis, and therefore I'm just not going to use it.
It's like an executive director of something, right?
Yeah, Ben Stockwell, who like runs the data at PFF.
Yeah. Good job, Ben.
And is a good, football mind. He watched him and he was like, I don't think he has a strong arm. That's just one of the things people say, but I don't see it very often. And I know what he means, but I think he does have a strong arm. He just doesn't deploy it very often. And I likened it to it's Masters weekend. When you're playing golf, every now and again you hit one really well. Like if you're not a good golfer, every now and again you connect perfectly and it makes that ping sound and it flies and it looks great and it feels great. That's what Trey Lance throwing seems like to me. Every now and again he just rips one. It's like, oh yeah, there's the arm. Like it's definitely there. And then you wonder what happens in between then. It just doesn't seem to let it fly. I don't know if he's consciously trying to take arm strength out of it to try and be more accurate or what it is, but for some reason it isn't there on a down-to-down basis. But again, because all these toolsy guys have kind of worked out recently, I'm sort of bullish on the idea that a team can take him and fix that. Maybe not fix the accuracy part, but actually get him displaying the arm strength on a regular basis, which will offset some of the inaccuracy. So I do like those two, but you watch Justin Fields and you're just like, there's just less to be concerned about. He's the most accurate of the three. He's got arguably the best arm of the three. He's as athletic as Trey Lance, albeit maybe not quite as natural a runner. But he's just the best combination of all of it. So take him at 3.
Ben, I love Ben's notes. He has had a little bit more time this year to actually watch prospects while he's also honing and training people in the grading process. So I always ask Ben, when you watch football, just give me your notes because it is insightful. And it will sound crazy, not to toot Ben Stockwell's horn even more, but
I want to do that.
Nobody knows Ben. Nobody knows anything about him. He is like, the Patriots guy that's behind the scenes, pink stripes guy.
Yeah. What the hell is that guy's name?
I just forgot his name. Ernie Adams.
Yeah, there you go.
Ben Stockwell is like
Ernie Adams?
Yes.
Okay.
Ben Stockwell is to PFF as Ernie Adams is to Bill Belichick.
Norwich is Ernie Adams.
I'm just saying, Ben sits behind the scenes, watches more football than maybe anybody in the world.
Yeah.
Has a great understanding of it, explains it in a funky accent, but still explains it really, really well.
Funky accent.
Right? And I love getting Ben's thoughts and notes. So when he was watching Justin Fields in particular, first off, he's also very wordy. But Ben has a whole paragraph venting about Ohio State's offense.
It is. I understand 100% what he means. I hate watching that offense. And way back when I first watched some Justin Fields, my first takeaway was this offense is a nightmare to try and evaluate Justin Fields because it basically forces him into doing this whole it creates the narrative of Justin Fields can't work through his progression. Right. Because it actually doesn't want him to. It sort of forces him into this world of, where you're going pre-snap, so just take the snap, walk back two steps, stare down your first target and wait for him to come open, and then just fire the ball at him. And that's not Justin Fields. That is this offense essentially manufacturing that on a consistent basis.
But that's why I think if the analysis is objective, it is fair to say it's not so much he can't. Remember, it's not about he can't, it's he hasn't, right? He hasn't done it.
But it makes it a pain to go through and evaluate because it's promoting a thing that isn't helpful.
But then it gets into, so then it's like you're looking for plays where he gets to his second read or he gets to his check down. And there are some, and Ben made the notes as well. It's like, hey, in the Clemson game, they had a few and he got there, right? So then it becomes this, can he do it? versus how often. And you want to lean on when you see things more often, it's easier to project.
Yep.
But it was interesting getting Ben's take and having that match. So does Justin Fields sit on his first read a little bit, not work through the field quickly? Yes, like that can still be true, but the offense is also not really doing him many favors. So all that said, you're going with Justin Fields at 3. That's what we did in our mock. I don't want to deviate from that in my own. I feel pretty good about Lawrence and then Wilson and then Justin Fields. So I think from my point of view, the draft starts at 4 with the Atlanta Falcons. It starts at 3, but for me, I'm all about Fields at 3. What are we doing with the Atlanta Falcons at 4?
So we went through this last time, right? I think that the Falcons are in this tough spot where the value to trade down is not there. And, the Atlanta Falcons are open to trading the number 4 pick, source says, is the ESPN report, right? Which essentially, the subtext of that to me is the Atlanta Falcons are desperately trying to trade the number 4 overall pick, but nobody's calling. That's like, it's a giant open sign, open for business, the number 4 overall pick, and they haven't been able to get it so far. And the reason I don't think they've been able to get it is because the teams left that are in need of a quarterback after the 49ers pick at 3 don't need to get to 4. They just don't. They need to get to 6 or 7 if the Lions aren't in the quarterback market. They don't need to get as high as 4. So why would you throw away that extra draft capital to move further? So the Atlanta Falcons I think are going to be in this tough spot where they're not going to have a trade partner to get to 4. The defensive talent is not there at 4. They're just going to have to pick the best offensive weapon or the best offensive player that they like at 4. And I think that leaves them with Kyle Pitts.
Do you buy – I want to talk about the 4th quarterback off the board really quickly.
Okay.
And why maybe the Falcons aren't holding the cards, so to speak. My buddy Mike, listener of the show, friend of the show, because he's my buddy. I'll introduce you sometime. He went and sent me a list. It's from patspulpit.com, and I think it was Patriots. It's a Patriots website that was saying, if you get the 4th quarterback in the draft, here's what that looks like historically. Do you buy into this at all? There's some like wisdom of the crowds there. There's some just playing the odds that there are going to be 4 or 5 good quarterbacks in the league. So do you buy into this at all? Would you look at this list historically and say, I just don't want the 4th quarterback in the draft, right? Last year it was Jordan Love. 2 years ago it was Drew Lock. 2018, Josh Rosen. And going backwards, Deshaun Kaiser. Christian Hackenberg. He never should have been the 4th quarterback, but he was.
Yeah.
2015 was Sean Mannion.
Ooh.
2014 is the best name on this list.
How high was Sean Mannion drafted?
In 15, check it out, 4th, 5th round.
That was a rough year
because it was Winston. Only Winston, Mariota, and Trevor Siemian, I believe, played snaps in that draft.
3rd round pick.
He was in the 3rd. Mannion. I didn't realize
overall.
he was that high.
But that shows how bad that draft was.
Derek Carr is the best name on this list, 2014.
Yeah.
And then going backwards, Matt Barkley,
okay,
Brandon Weeden, who was in the 1st round, Christian Ponder, who was in the 1st round,
yeah,
Colt McCoy, 3rd round, Pat White, Chad Henne, John Beck, Kellen Clemens, Charlie Fry, J.P. Lossman, 1st rounder,
yeah,
Rex Grossman, 1st rounder,
yeah,
Josh McCown, that's the 2nd best name on this list, I think.
Yeah.
Him and Grossman, maybe? I don't know. And then Marcus Tuiasosopo in 2001.
Marcus.
How about that? So do you buy into this whole, like we're an analytics company and we do that, we run the numbers and all that stuff, but some people look at numbers and they're just like, well, historically the 4th quarterback isn't good, so I just don't want him.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably something to the idea that there is a limited number of NFL caliber quarterbacks that are ever going to come out in any given moment and be, viable. So when you start to look at number 4, I mean, I imagine without checking that the list for number 5 is very similar. Maybe the list for number 3 is a little bit better, and the list for number 2 is better than that, and the list for number 1 is the best. But the idea that once you get to 4 in a draft class, this is why I'm saying, like, when you're making all these pre-draft decisions and you're like, well, just go get the 4th, just go get the quarterback. There's 5 of them in the 1st round. Go get the one that's left. I don't think it's not as simple as that, because half these teams are going to look at this list of 5 and say, I have 3. It's not a list of 5. It's a list of 3 viable quarterbacks, and the next 2 don't work out. So we're not going for if those are the only two left, we're no longer in the quarterback market. And I think that's where Carolina was already. They made that determination. Because the draft is essentially set already, with 1 and 2 being Lawrence and Wilson, I think there's a bunch of teams that look at this draft and say, there are not 5 quarterbacks, there's 2. And once the 2 are gone, we're out. So I think Philadelphia already made that determination. I think Carolina already made that determination. So all this, obviously San Francisco didn't, because they went up for 3. But this, I don't think it's as simple as there's 5 quarterbacks. I think teams are looking at that. So that I think is...
The 49ers going up to 3 helps.
Right, but that I think... so
other teams make this decision now.
Yeah, but what you're looking at is 2 different interpretations of the number of viable quarterbacks that are in this draft. So at least 2 teams have essentially already made the determination that there's 2, not 5. One team has made the determination that there's at least 3 because they were happy to go up to number 3 with a lot of trade capital to get the 3rd guy. But the point is, I think that list of names for the 4th guy is essentially an indication that, look, once you get beyond those first couple of guys, it's very much a case of, fit or luck about what you're coming away with. And that's why I think we might start to see 4 and 5 slip a little bit further than people think they were.
I agree.
On the other hand, not to spend the entire show talking about Ben again, but Ben was making the point that 2017 class of Trubisky, Mahomes, and Watson, in particular Mahomes and Watson, the way they panned out after being the 10th and 11th pick or whatever they were, might be forcing all of the first-round quarterbacks like well inside the top 10, because you can't risk anymore letting them fall to 10 and it turns out he's Deshaun Watson or Patrick Mahomes. Like, if you think a guy has a chance to be an elite NFL quarterback, you have to pick him at 5. You can't let him slip that far. So maybe this group of quarterbacks all goes in the top 6, like Adam Schefter is talking about. On the other hand, I do think that difference in evaluation amongst the teams is going to cause 1 or 2 of them to slip outside of the top 10.
Yeah, that's the other thing that would be working against that theory of everybody going as far as quarterbacks go. Like Carson Wentz just got traded, Jared Goff got traded, so now there's this number out there, the last first-round quarterback or top 10 quarterback to do anything well or whatever. It's like 10 years apart. But that also I don't think matters, because you have to take shots at quarterbacks, and the payoff is it's an uneven payout, right? You have to do it, and if you miss, and you move on. So I don't think teams are scared of that. Let's get back to the mock draft here. Atlanta Falcons at 4. So this pivot point, we said maybe they're not holding the cards. You're going Kyle Pitts here.
Yeah.
Why Kyle Pitts over Jamar Chase, over a tackle, over a defensive player, which is a huge need for the Falcons?
I think Pitts is so let's thread this needle so that I don't contradict what I've said previously.
No, make a sound bite. Make a sound
bite. So I'm going to thread the needle, right? I think Pitts is the most special player available in this draft, certainly outside of quarterbacks, and the player that when you describe what he is not in every single draft, and in fact is not in many drafts at all. Jamar Chase is a very good receiver, and people talk about him as the best prospect since Julio Jones and whatever, but you can describe Jamar Chase's skill set in most drafts. You can't describe Kyle Pitts' skill set in every single draft. So
I like that.
I think you take the guy that you think is genuinely special and not available very often, which some people might suggest is akin to chasing unicorns, which I've criticized and cautioned against in the past. I would say,
unless you know it's
that
a
as
unicorn,
long as you phrase it in the way that I initially did, you haven't done that and therefore are fine.
All right, so you're going Kyle Pitts, and let's just dream for a little bit. Matt Ryan, they're stuck with him for the next 2 years, or playing him the next 2 years. Let's dream Kyle Pitts, Julio Jones, and Calvin Ridley all on the field at the same time.
Yeah.
And Hayden Hurst and Russell Gage. That's a pretty good group of playmakers. And in a division where you have to keep up with the Bucs, the Saints will probably still be able to score pretty well, and then you have the Panthers. The Falcons, you got to put some points on the board, and they can hit defense in later rounds.
Yep.
So I don't hate that.
Let's roll.
All right. How many times have we debated this? Bengals at 5.
Not just us, everybody.
Everybody's debating Jamar Chase versus Penei Sewell. We've discussed it plenty here on the PFF NFL podcast. You're going Jamar Chase.
Yep. And honestly, I mean, so Robert Mays wrote a great article on this. He came down the other side that says, you get the protection first. I think it's a coin flip. Honestly, I think you can make a good case in either direction that you're better off getting an elite tackle prospect first. You're better off getting Jamar Chase first. Either way, I think you're going to be in a good position as the Bengals to come back in round 2 and address the one that you didn't pick. In this particular scenario, I didn't engineer it this way, but you can come back in the second round. Elijah Vera-Tucker will be there at the top of the second. That's a pretty good spot if you get Jamar Chase and Vera-Tucker out of those 2 picks. So I don't think it matters. I think for Cincinnati, it's a case of we can't screw this pick up, essentially. And if you're flipping a coin, why not get Joe Burrow, his favorite college wide receiver, who had an amazing connection, put up crazy numbers, and I assume he is like lobbying for behind the scenes. Like, why not just make your quarterback happy, give him his favorite weapon who also helps your offense? That's the way I look at it.
In my mock next week, I'm back and forth on it too, and I think one of our listeners sent us a tweet about Mays and how he broke it down, and one of his arguments for it was the certainty, and I use that in air quotes. There's more certainty in first round tackles than first round receivers in recent history. We know the John Rosses of the world and stuff like that, right?
Well, not just that, but it's the order of being able to. So this is one of the big storylines of this draft. It's the certainty, not just of the round that you're able to categorize players into, but the differentiation between the players in each category, right? So how often are you able to accurately determine which of the first round wide receivers will be the better player, as opposed to just, is he a first round receiver, is he a second, third guy, versus how often are you able to predict who the better tackle will be? And the history says that you're able to predict the better tackle, or at least the draft says that you're able to predict the better tackle more often than the better receiver. So as much as everyone thinks that Jamar Chase is the number 1 receiver on every board, there's a pretty good chance that in, whatever it is, 9 months' time, we're going to be looking at this and saying, God, you idiots, like Devontae Smith is the best receiver, or, Terrace Marshall is the best receiver, whoever it is, right? Whereas the history says you got a far better chance of looking at this in a year's time and saying, yeah, Penei Sewell is the best tackle.
And I would almost look at here's what would lean me toward Penei. Here's my argument for it. It's not so much hit rate as much as I know how the NFL values receivers compared to how I value them, and I know how the NFL values tackles. There's more likely to be a tackle run than a wide receiver run in the top 10. It's just the nature of it. And if there's a tackle run, there's fewer tackles on the turn in the second round. If the wide receivers get pushed down again, last year
does happen in this mock. There's a tackle run in this mock.
Right
now, I think Cincinnati needs interior help more than they need tackle help anyway. So I'm okay with that because, like, if Vera-Tucker lands there, I'm happy. But you're right. There's a much greater risk in my eyes of if there is a run on tackles, we are sitting there at the top of the second without a great option. There's no risk of that happening at receivers. Like, if there's a run on wide receivers, there's still going to be a great receiver available at the top of the second round.
The one other thing to think about, though, is, again, Riley Reif isn't keeping me from drafting Penei Sewell.
Sure.
But if you get Vera-Tucker, who I think is the best pass-blocking guard in this draft, he slots right in as a starter. And now you have Vera-Tucker and Riley Reif, at least in the short term, upgrading your offensive line. Reif has a 1-year contract. If next year at this time you're still looking for a tackle, it's not the worst thing in the world if you're the Bengals. Again, if the alternative is you're really locked in at wide receiver with guys getting open quickly to help Burrow get rid of the ball quickly. So Riley Reif could be a Band-Aid. You could push the tackle problem to next year at right tackle and have the wide receiver and the guard, right? Which might be a bigger need, at least in the short term, for the Bengals. So I don't hate that as an idea. I just tweeted out to the fans about your Denver decision here, and I actually saw this. I think it was on the Draft Network. Somebody made this exact move that you just made here. So who does Denver draft?
So
at number 6 here, they're trading up from number 9.
This is, I think, a good. When you look at this, everyone's like 4 or 5 quarterbacks going to go in the top 6 picks. I think there's a very real chance that doesn't happen because Atlanta's not taking a quarterback. The Bengals, I think, obviously they're not taking a quarterback. And that suddenly starts to slip them down. So this is why I don't think a team needs to trade up to Atlanta at 4, right? Which is what that is contingent on. If 5 quarterbacks are going to go in the top 6 or whatever, somebody needs to trade to number 4. And this is precisely why that doesn't happen, because why do you need to? You can trade to 6 instead. Now, that relies on Miami taking the value, but I think what they've done already shows that they're perfectly happy to play that game. And if you throw enough in Miami's direction, they will take that deal. So I think Denver, seeing 2 quarterbacks start to slide, and Denver may be the one team where I think they're desperate enough that they will take one of the 5. Doesn't matter which one. They will be of the opinion that there are 5 quarterbacks in the first round. We can't start Drew Lock again. We need one of the 5. Doesn't matter which one. But in this scenario, they actually have a shot at either one of the remaining 2. They've got a choice of 2. I think Denver jumps up to 6, grabs Trey Lance, and honestly, I kind of like that fit for them.
You like him over Mac Jones as a fit? We've talked a lot about Mac Jones being the distributor and the way the receiving core is built there, and that's Jones' fit.
I agree with Ben in that I don't think Trey Lance is really that raw in any way, shape, or form. I think he actually starts day one and does a good job. I just think he's a little bit more inaccurate than you would like. And again, there's this recent history of teams fixing that. Fixing accuracy, which used to be the thing that you can't fix. Now, I don't know if it still is. Maybe Trey Lance will always be inaccurate. But again, I'm less concerned about that than I used to be. There is a history and a pathway to more inaccurate quarterbacks being good at the NFL level, even if they never get better at the accuracy. Like Trey Lance has Cam Newton, Carson Wentz type skills that can offset even a permanent lack of accuracy compared with other quarterbacks. And he has receivers that get that wide the hell open that themselves offset that inaccuracy. So Jerry Jeudy, who will be 5 yards open every time the ball goes his way.
Yeah, but pass location doesn't matter as long as
right,
you just
will
just
help
get it to him.
A lot of that inaccurate passing because he gives you a wider window to hit. So I really like Trey Lance's ability to step in, start day one in Denver, and bring that extra dimension to the offense with his rushing threat.
Wow. So Trey Lance. So you have Denver going from 9 to 6, Miami, who moved up to 6.
Yeah.
Presumably because what we had talked about, they think there's a blue chipper there. Penei Sewell, Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith.
And I think Miami calculated that there's a pretty good chance that they would get Jamar Chase because I think they probably think that the Bengals
Pitts.
Maybe, but I think that they probably think that the Bengals would take Sewell, would go offensive line over receiver.
Yeah.
In this mock, they don't. And therefore, I think Miami are going to be like, all right, I'm prepared to move down now. Like, if Jamar Chase was on the board, maybe we stay and we make that pick. But he's gone, so I'm okay with moving down and maybe get a wide receiver a couple of spots lower. Plus, I think they've already sort of shown that, look, if you throw enough in their direction, they will move for a couple of draft spots.
So Trey Lance over Mac Jones. I'm a little surprised by that. And that's coming from a guy that likes Mac Jones. As
well,
what's
your argument? What's your argument against it? Give me a good reason.
I just think Mac Jones being more accurate will mesh with that wide receiver core a little bit better. I mean, your argument's great. I mean, it's like, look, good receivers make everybody better, right? They make the inaccurate guy better. They make Mac Jones, who's a good decision maker, good, facilitator of the offense, and all of these, generic terms that we're using. Receivers will make him better. I think Mac Jones could come in and move the ball pretty well with that group, and I think that would be attractive for the Broncos. Whereas I do think Lance will. There's an inexperience and a competition issue. Like, it's just a little bit
same
riskier.
number of starts, right, as Mac Jones.
Yeah, but he did it in the SEC.
Yeah, but that's different. That's
I said experience plus.
Yeah, but the experience is the same. That's a wash.
Yeah, I'm also just lower on Lance in general.
After his that's fine. I'm just making sure that your argument is sound and not bullshit.
Do number of pass attempts. What's the number of pass attempts?
I don't know.
Trey Lance coming out of North Dakota State's offense where they throw the ball a handful of times a game, much like what happened with Carson Wentz.
It's all about snaps, Steve.
Look, Wentz, you just look at snap count.
Uh-huh.
Mac Jones is more experienced. He's throwing the football a lot more. Let me get the exact numbers here. But
look, you're dismissing rush attempts, and that's a disappointing thing to see from you.
7 and 8, Lions and Panthers. Now here's your back-to-back tackles. Penei Sewell to the Lions, Rashawn Slater to the Panthers.
Yep. The Lions are interesting because it's like, well, what do you do as the first pick of a regime that has an age, right? Like 6-year contracts for everybody. Nobody's getting fired anytime soon. You don't have to swing for the fences on a quarterback. You can bide your time until there's one you love, until maybe you're picking number 1 overall. You get the choice of all of them. So what do you pick? A couple of the blue chippers are gone on that side of the ball. I think the one that's left is Palazzolo, who is, the dude had like 3 total pressures his last full season as a 19-year-old. Now, okay, it was in the Pac-12, not against phenomenal opposition, but that's still pretty freaking impressive.
Yeah, I like Sewell to Lions. They have Taylor Decker at left tackle. Sewell can start at right tackle. I think it's a fine fit. I think he could be there. I think ultimately Cincinnati does take him, though, at 5, right? But if Sewell's there, I like that pick for the Lions. And then the Panthers, after going to get Darnold, maybe taking themselves out of the QB sweepstakes.
Yeah, I think they are.
Cameron Irving slated to be their left tackle at the moment, so I like Rashawn Slater step in and be a starter.
Yeah. Look, they, I think, have bought in fairly conclusively to the idea that Darnold has been broken by the environment around him. They are already giving him the best environment he's ever had in terms of receivers, in terms of coach, in terms of play calling. The one area where that environment doesn't look dramatically better is the offensive line. So let's address that now and give him a tackle that some people have as the number 1 tackle on their board.
Now, since I was just watching the 1999 NFL draft, just for fun, I was thinking about this. I feel weird mock drafting and going through and just picking all these offensive players. Even as PFF, where we think about offense first and defense is unstable, but there's a lack of impact defensive players in this draft, right? Mm-hmm. So in 1999, there were actually similarities. 3 quarterbacks came off the board to start: Tim Couch, Donovan McNabb, Achilles Smith. Now, the difference was the next 2 were both running backs, Edgerrin James and Ricky Williams. So in yours, it's Kyle Pitts, it's Jamar Chase, it's pass catchers. And then another receiver in 99, Torrey Holt, came off at 6. The first defensive player wasn't until number 7. It was Champ Bailey. And then there was another receiver, David Boston, at 8. I just think it's fascinating looking back at 1999, and there's 2 receivers, 2 running backs, and 3 quarterbacks in the first 8 picks. I think this year we could see just a massive run in the top 10 of just all offensive players, much like we're seeing in your mock draft and a lot of our mock drafts.
Yeah. I mean, one of the big differences, I think, between that 99, do you think that the days of like running backs in the top 5 are just done? Because you don't have to go back that far.
We're a couple years removed from it, but yeah, I think we are. I think
it feels like a completely different world where like a couple of running backs can go in the top 5, and yet you go back to where Zeke was the last one. Is
Fournette.
That right? Fournette. Yeah, you don't have to go back far to find them, but it does feel like this different world of like 99, where it's like, oh, we get done with the quarterbacks, then we move on to the next most valuable position, running back, and then on down the sequence.
I want to say that we're done with it, but it's like this class has some solid backs. I mean, even like Josh Jacobs going in the 20s. But if you had another bell cow, Herschel Walker looking guy like a Leonard Fournette, I could see teams talking themselves into that guy in the top 10 again. Or another Christian McCaffrey type. He went 8 a couple years ago. I could see them talking themselves into that guy. I just thought it was fascinating that it was so offensive minded, much like this year's draft. So another offensive player, Devontae Smith at 9. So the Dolphins drop from 6 to 9 and get Devontae Smith. I like this, right? I mean, this is you pick up an extra third,
and in theory,
Devontae slots into a major position of need here.
Depending on how desperate Denver is, they potentially net a win on that trade from 12 to 9. You know what I mean? So they trade from 3 to 12 with the 49ers, then jump from 12 to 6, presumably targeting a player like Jamar Chase. But then if Chase is gone, they trade down to 9. Depending on how desperate Denver is for that quarterback, they pick up that premium and actually end up making good on that move as well, and end up with Devontae Smith at the end of it all, who might end up being a better receiver than Jamar Chase. Like,
I think it's a great way to do it.
When you look at the comparison between the two, the only thing that stands against Devontae Smith, who, remember, won the Heisman Trophy last year, which is not an award that tends to go to wide receivers. Like, I don't know, who was the last receiver that won the Heisman? Are we going back to, like, Desmond Howard? Like, how long ago was it?
Tim Brown, right?
Yeah. You've got to go back a while for a receiver to win that thing. So the only thing against Devontae Smith is that the dude plays at 170 pounds, and there simply aren't a long and glorious history of receivers succeeding at that weight and at 6'1" in the NFL. On the other hand, there isn't a huge history of wide receivers winning the Heisman in the last 20 years. So he's already an outlier. This is kind of like the Kyler Murray height thing to me, right? Why will it suddenly become a problem? He's already the outlier. He's already a guy who has succeeded in spite of being 2 foot tall. So why is it suddenly going to be a problem? Devontae Smith already just won the Heisman in the SEC, putting first-round corners into a blender for a couple of years. Why will being 170 pounds suddenly become a problem at the NFL level? So anyway,
you're a Devontae Smith guy. I
am.
Get it.
And look, I get being scared of it. I think it's real. And I think because he's so close to Jamar Chase, even I would lean Chase because like that 30 pounds is enough to scare me. But I would not be in the slightest bit surprised if Devontae Smith was a better receiver immediately.
And for the extra pick, I mean, again, it comes down to, would you get an extra third rounder?
I mean, I think
Devontae and a third rounder for Jamar Chase, essentially. If you're not even for Jamar Chase, it would be for like a Penei Sewell. But I'm just saying the decision that Jamar Chase wasn't on the clock, it wasn't on the board, but you're debating what is the drop off from Jamar Chase to Devontae Smith. Well, if I have an extra third rounder, I still feel better about that move in general.
Yeah.
By the way, we forgot about Saquon Barkley in the top.
Yeah. And
going second a couple of years ago.
I think Denver would cough up a lot more than a third-round pick to make that move.
Because they really want Trey Lance.
Well, they really want a quarterback. They really want to not be starting Drew Lock in 2021, and that's their only way of making that happen.
So we finally have a defensive player come off the board. Dallas at 10 takes Patrick Surtain.
Yeah.
From Alabama.
2, please.
2. Patrick Surtain, 2. First defensive player, good fit for the Cowboys. Very common. This might be the most common mock draft pick. For us, I think it was Caleb Farley before. He dropped a little bit with some of his back concerns, which I guess got signed off on this weekend. But Patrick Surtain to the Cowboys, really nice fit.
Yeah, at least the reports that he did well in his rechecked medical at the Combine, which is in Indy still, but only exists to medically screen a bunch of prospects. Having said that, the report came from his agent, Drew Rosenhaus. So, I mean, how negative would it be if coming out of that? Look, I think it's probably true.
Let's get Drew on here to discuss his players and try to get some negatives.
I think it's probably true that he checked out and it all was okay. It wasn't supposed to be a major concern this time around. The concern is simply that he's had 2 back procedures already, and that's never a good thing.
All right, so now we've got more movement here. You've got the Patriots.
Yeah.
Trading up for the last remaining first-round caliber quarterback at 11 overall here.
In most eyes. Patriots get within sight of a quarterback and make a jump to 11 to snag Mac Jones. Tom Brady 2.0. I think this works out well. Look, this is, again, so one of these quarterbacks falls outside of the top 10, but only to 11. And that puts him within striking distance of a team like the Patriots, who don't have a great answer at quarterback right now. This whole team, they just deployed an absolute boatload of money, and they still have like a bad answer at quarterback in terms of a low-price gamble of Cam Newton somehow rediscovering his old form. Alternatively, they get within sight of a Mac Jones, and it's like, I can see that. I can see how he works in this offense. I can see how he works with this bunch of playmakers. And at this cost, jumping from where do they start? 15 to 11, that's worth doing. Jumping from 12 to 3 and therefore investing 3 first-round picks in Mac Jones, that's a hell of a lot more risky. Jumping from 15 to 11, I can get on board with that.
I like the way you're weighing that. And again, it's like, okay, the Patriots have Cam Newton for one more year, and it's always worth a shot. I think the Patriots are in position to take a shot at quarterback. I just want to come back to, if you're the New England Patriots after having Tom Brady for 20 years, is that an advantage to, say, finding the next Tom Brady? Like, do you know what you're looking for? Because it's a guy that, or if you had a Drew Brees for the last 15 years, like the Saints, right? Is that an advantage to finding the next guy? Because they weren't, like, Brees wasn't really a diamond in the rough, but he was a second rounder. Brady's essentially the classic diamond in the rough, right? A guy that was fighting for his job at Michigan, always outplayed his competitors. It's not like the Dolphins replacing Dan Marino. Like, Dan Marino looked different the entire time, had a crazy arm, and it's like, okay, he's just tough to find, but if I see a guy that looks like Dan Marino, I'll be able to see the arm. You know how Tom Brady operated and ticked and all that stuff. So when you're investigating the next QB prospects, If you're in New England, are you sitting there like, well, Tom had this and this and this, and that's what we're looking for? Or are you just like, whatever, he's a unicorn.
Right.
And we can never replicate that.
I do think that's, look, if you're looking for the next Tom Brady, you're probably going to be disappointed just in perpetuity. You're talking about the greatest quarterback to ever play the game, who did it in a way that most people haven't done. 6th-round pick, was valued from the start, had the dad bod in 2000 as a combine invitee. Like, the whole thing is just, you're not going to replicate that again. It's kind of dumb to try. But if there's a team that at least should be able to identify the factors or the thing behind the scenes that made Tom Brady as good as he was, or the reasons that he was able to succeed in spite of whatever limitations he had, I mean, the Patriots had a first-row seat to that for the last 20 years. So if anybody can see them, it should be them. Now, I don't know if Mac Jones has those, and I don't think anybody does. But again, the Patriots are as well-positioned as anybody to understand if he does have the critical factors that will offset not being the best athlete in the world, not having the strongest arm in the world, having to make a massive adjustment from wide the hell open receivers at all times for Alabama versus, NFL covered receivers.
And Michigan had the same thing. If you watch Michigan's film back in 99, Brady he had Steve Hutchinson protecting him. He had great time. He had receivers getting open. So, it's been done before. Tom Brady did it. I just think it's fascinating that, teams have psychology tests and all these different things to predict prospects. And it's like, well, the Patriots might have their own homespun thing where it's like they got into the brain of the greatest quarterback of all time. And I don't know if it's an advantage or not. All right, let's go through some of these next few picks. The Eagles at 12, Kwity Paye going back to the defensive line. The Chargers at 13 go Christian Darrisaw. There's your starting left tackle to finish the offensive line overhaul. Oh, and then you decided to we'll get to the Vikings pick in a minute because you finally agreed with me now that you put your real mock draft together.
No, I didn't agree with you at all. I just got screwed by myself a pick earlier. Look, Eagles was the same pick I think we made in our mock draft. That team has been at its best when they've been able to run 7 deep with guys who can generate pressure on the defensive line. Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham aren't getting any younger. Derek Barnett is good, not great. They could use one more dominant player on that defensive line. Kwity Paye brings some sort of interior, outside versatility as well. You can move him around. You can get back to that position where you're going to generate pressure at all times, and I think that's what they need, particularly when they've kind of passed on a quarterback for this year.
Really quick, interesting number on the guys that are like first-round hopefuls at edge defender. Kwity Paye has the second most snaps of the group. Now
that's
listen,
like 1,300 and something.
And he only has 1,300. That's about 2 seasons of 600 plus or whatever. That's not a lot of experience.
Yeah.
But Joseph Asai from Texas over 1,500. Kwity Paye over 1,300. The next few guys aren't even over 1,000. Jalen Phillips from Miami, Azeez Ojulari from Georgia, Jason Owe from Penn State, and Gregory Rousseau from Miami. All those guys are 960 or less, which I think is just one of the underrated stories about projecting some of these defensive players. There's just a smaller sample size.
Harold Landry played 1,050 last year alone.
Right, just as perspective, right?
Not even counting the playoffs.
No, a guy like Chris Jones a couple years ago at Mississippi State, one of my big takeaways was he had one full season and like a half season of work that were just elite, and it was about 1,000 snaps. So like we've seen this happen before. I just think that it makes the projection a little bit harder.
If you count the playoffs, 5 edge rushers were over 1,000 snaps last season in the NFL.
Yeah, it's just not a lot of football that's been played with a lot of these guys. So a lot of them are projections, Kwity Paye included. Darrisaw goes to the Chargers, loving the way that offensive line looks. I think this is a great situation for the Chargers, grabbing at least one of those top 3 tackles.
And it was interesting how many teams are in the position of needing a starting left tackle in the draft. This idea of you don't draft for need, you don't go into the draft with a glaring hole that you need to fill because all of a sudden that's how you end up in a tough spot. The Chargers are one, but I think they're high enough that they're okay. They know there will be one there. But once you get beyond the Chargers, it suddenly starts to get kind of desperate for some of these teams. So the Chargers take Darrisaw, which helps complete that overhaul on the offensive line and leaves the Vikings boned one spot further down. The Vikings are looking at this going, sweet, we've got the card filled in, Darrisaw's name's on it, we're about to run up, make the pick, boom, gone. Now you're like, all right, now we're screwed. What do we do? So I've gone on the basis that, I don't like it. I would love my starting left tackle, but my starting left tackle just went a pick earlier, So screw it, we'll take Barmore.
And that's us looking at Darisaw as the third tackle in the draft, being a little bit higher. The next tackle that comes off the board is Tevin Jenkins for you, 24, to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So you went with what I said, though. I wanted Christian Barmore even over Darisaw for the Vikings. You bring him in, you let him play 3-tech, you get a 3-man D-line rotation with Michael Pierce and Dalvin Tomlinson. A year from now, Barmore's your 3-tech and Tomlinson's your nose. And look, you need better pass rush, and Christian Barmore is the best rusher to come out in a couple of years. I think he might make a bigger impact than a tackle anyway for the Vikings. So I like Barmore. Bama interior defensive lineman at 14 to the Vikings. Now, 15, the Giants draft a linebacker. It's Micah Parsons, and I love Micah Parsons, but I would be really tempted by who you took at 16, Jalen Waddle, the speed receiver going to the Giants, who already brought in Kenny Golladay and have Darius Slayton and have Sterling Shepard. I'd be tempted by that one extra wide receiver piece for Daniel Jones.
They already got him. They got a faster guy. They got John Ross. What are you talking about?
And I do love John Ross. I'd sign John Ross for that 1 year, $2 million contract. You know that. But Parsons at 15 to the Giants, who traded down, and then the Cardinals taking Jalen Waddle.
You know the last time the Giants spent a first-round pick on a linebacker?
It's like 84 or something.
Yeah, Carl Banks.
Carl Banks. There you go.
It just so happens that Parsons looks like Carl Banks. Perfect.
Carl does analysis and all that stuff. Now I bet every year he's like thinking we need a linebacker.
Yeah,
we're going to mock a linebacker.
It's great.
In the first
it's like
round.
Micah Parsons looks like the last linebackers that the Giants were taking in the first round because he looks like a player that belongs in 1984. So I think it's a great fit. Parsons is interesting because he brings that sort of presence to a defense, and if he has question marks, they're in coverage, but I think he has that Dante Hightower thing where he can offset whatever those concerns are by being this like above and beyond presence as a blitzer. And if you need to, like if you get him in the building and you decide that, yeah, you know what, I don't love what he does in coverage. In an ideal world, we need to hide him a little bit and take him out of that coverage scheme as much as possible. The good thing is you've got something to do with him. Like you don't just have to hide him in the scheme. It's like, well, let's deploy him on the rush and let's cause some matchup problems up front the way that the Patriots have done for years with Hightower. And then, Hightower developed in coverage. He got a lot better, and now you don't need to hide him all the time. But that was, I think, how it began. It's like, we'll take him out of coverage, we'll hide him a little bit, and take advantage of the fact that he can destroy running backs and tight ends as a pass rusher. I think the roadmap for Micah Parsons might look very similar.
Yeah, it's a fair point on Parsons. If you want more on Parsons, you can break him down in the PFF NFL Draft Guide, which is all part of PFF Edge. And listen to this deal if you want to get Edge. Our friends at Underdog Fantasy. If you like fantasy football and you like playing fantasy for money, you need to check out Underdog Fantasy. Underdog's got everything, including season-long and playoff best ball. Now, here's the deal. Best ball, season-long game, you draft a team like you normally do. That's it. There's no in-season roster management. Underdog automatically selects your best performers each week, saving you loads of time. So if you go to Underdog Fantasy and deposit just $10 using the promo code PFF, you get a free PFF Edge annual subscription. The draft guide is a part of PFF Edge annual, plus you get, 365 days of access. So you use the promo code PFF. It's over at Underdog Fantasy. Get your draft guide. And to be honest, because you get a year's worth of access, you'll get next year's draft guide because it's within the calendar year. This is like just a little tip and a cheat code. You'll pretty much get the next two draft guides for the price of this $10 promo code PFF over at Underdog Fantasy. So go check it out. Underdog Fantasy promo code is PFF. So Parsons to the Giants. Yeah, I mean, I could see it. I could see that as a good fit. They need help in the middle of the defense. Feisty defense gets even better, Sam, as you know. I love Jalen Waddle to the Cardinals. I love the speed receiver to complement DeAndre Hopkins and Christian Kirk, and I love that. I think the Cardinals looking there or at corner is the play. And you notably forgot somebody in this draft. Can we just admit that maybe J.C. Horn would have been a good pick here too for the Cardinals?
No, I'm not picking J.C. Horn at 16.
You're lower on J.C. Horn, but not low enough to kick him out of the first round, right? Like you accidentally did here.
Maybe.
Why don't you like J.C. Horn? He might be the top corner off the board, Sam.
I don't love his skill set for 2021. I think if a bunch of teams ran pure man coverage at all times, J.C. Horn would be the guy. I think if you actually need to run zone, which every team in the NFL does most of the time, I don't love J.C. Horn's fit for that. I don't like his movement skills in terms of, like, his ability to flip his hips and move with fluidity, the way you compare his movement when he has to shift laterally and mirror receivers to that of Patrick Surtain, it's like night and day. It's two completely different worlds. Like J.C. Horn, I think, is very good when he can get physical with the receiver at the line of scrimmage. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Richard Sherman on Chris Collinsworth's pod is like, J.C. Horn's the guy that's going to be the great, the best corner from this draft, because that's kind of what Sherman did for years, right? Doesn't run a 4.3, so gets by, and not just gets by, thrives because he beats receivers up at the line of scrimmage, gets his hands on them and causes them problems. Problem is, I think that's a pretty small landing to have to stick. I think it's a very tough skill set to master, and there's a lot of tape of J.C. Horn not mastering it at the college level. Like Devontae Smith put that dude in a freaking blender when they played. So I don't think that J.C. Horn is the number one corner in this draft. I don't think he's even in that conversation. What? I don't even know if he's a first-round player.
Dude, I'm gonna have you challenge. Richard Sherman's gonna be a guest on the PFF draft show, draft weekend. I'm gonna have to get you on camera with Sherman challenging him.
That being said, I did kind of forget about him in this mock draft, and he probably should have been taken at least where I put Greg Newsome. But there's no way I wouldn't put him as high as Arizona at 16. I don't think that would be a good pick.
Look, sometimes you forget to write out the card and send the card in, and that's what happened to you. How about the Raiders at 17 going Caleb Farley here?
Yeah. So this is a little bit of what I would do, and a little bit of course, the Raiders would do this. Caleb Farley, injury question mark, sliding down the draft. If you look at the mock draft sim, at his peak, he was like a borderline top 10 draft pick. He would have been the first corner off the board, would have been going at the bottom of that top 10. Now he's slipping to like an average draft position of like 26, something like that. He's on the slide because of concerns about those injuries. Now, if they did check out, if we're not concerned about that, we are talking about a cornerback who has the most absurd burst to the football and recovery speed of any cornerback we've studied coming out of the draft since we've been doing college football. So 2014, talking about the last 6-7 years, nobody has closing burst the way Caleb Farley does. And he's got freaky size. Like a guy as big and long as he is should not be able to move like that. It is rare. That's the kind of player that the Raiders fall over themselves to draft. He's a defensive equivalent of Henry Ruggs, except he might actually be a really good player as well.
The defensive equivalent of Henry Ruggs.
Yeah.
Because he's got the best. Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I love Farley. I love him there. Again, if there are any concerns about his injury, it's easier for me to swallow if I've got the extra first-round pick, if I've got a little bit of a safety net. But look, the Raiders have questions at corner. They got the new scheme over there. They're going to play. I mean, they need a Richard Sherman left cornerback in that system. And Farley is a different player than Richard Sherman, but he's got that skill set that they would potentially tap into. I don't mind it. It's a boom or bust type of pick because of the nature of the position plus the back injury. So Farley to the Raiders at 17. You have Jalen Phillips, the Miami edge, going to the Miami Dolphins. Rashad Bateman, wide receiver, going to the football team. I think we've talked about that as a really nice fit to complement Terry McLaurin. Thoughts on Phillips and the Dolphins and just getting an edge? I think that is one of those positions they're going to be targeting. Also, I think they're going to be targeting running back at this spot. I really do. I think this is where, in real life.
Stop it.
Look, just full perspective here. At PFF, because of how we value running backs, we're not even thinking about taking any of them. Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, any of those. We're not thinking about taking any of them. I'm saying realistically, the first time Najee Harris could come off the board is 18 to the Dolphins.
Look at the moves they have made. This is a woke 21st century franchise. They are not drafting a running back at number 18. They are perfectly happy to roll into the season with Myles Gaskin as their starting running back if their offensive line is dramatically improved. Not happening. They are going to target edge rusher because they don't have an edge rusher, and they have that extra first-round pick to play with and a ton of draft capital coming down the pike with all the moves they've made. They are going to take a gamble, essentially. Pick your favorite gamble. Like almost all of these edge rushers have some kind of gamble associated with them. As you said, low sample size for all of them, injury history, whatever it is, every one of them has some kind of major question mark, which is why none of them are going, where Chase Young went. So Miami, pick your favorite. And I have no idea who their favorite will be, but let's go with Jalen Phillips.
Yeah, I like Phillips. He could be the best guy. He could be the best one in this group here. I'm just saying, I think they might think about a running back there.
Stop it.
Bateman to the football team.
Love
nice all-around threat with McLaurin, with Curtis Samuel.
This is one of my favorite picks of the first round. I think this situation would be phenomenal.
Do you have a least favorite pick in the first round? There's always one that you're just like,
I don't
reluctantly, probably Trevon Moehrig.
I don't love that one.
I think every Bears pick, I'm sorry, but every Bears pick at 20 is going to feel sad. We talked about this on the last podcast. It's like, oh, you got a safety. All the quarterbacks are gone.
That's probably my least favorite. I don't love that.
I think the rumor mill is starting to get strong, and you've heard this Davis Mills is going to go in the first round, and I think it's because of teams like the Bears. And I don't know if people are starting them or if there's actual leaks. Right, there's going to be 5 QBs off the board. So does Davis Mills or Kyle Trask or Kellen Mond or any of these guys who are definitely better day 2 type of prospects, if any of them are going to sneak into the first round, it's potentially the Bears at 20 or the Steelers at 24, right? I mean, it's unlikely, but I think if you're hearing rumors about this 6th first-round quarterback, it's because the Bears are sitting there at 20 on the outside looking in.
Remember the list of names you read out for the 4th overall quarterback taken every year?
Do 6th.
Can you imagine what it looks like for number 6?
Well, I know it won't be worse than Christian Hackenberg, which was 4th.
It might be the same.
Dak Prescott might have been the 6th off the board one year.
It would be bad, I think, if Chicago went, we are so in need of a quarterback that we need to reach and take the 6th best one in the middle of the first round still, when nobody else really thinks any of these guys are worth first rounders. Every year, there's usually a bit of buzz about like a big toolsy quarterback with a big arm, usually with some fairly major flaws, sneaking into the first round, as we get towards the draft, like Davis Webb, right? And it's always crap, right? They never go anywhere near the first round. It's just that as you get to the draft and somebody's talking to a team whose scout is like, oh, I love this guy. Look at his huge arm, big guy. And you're like, that guy doesn't make any decisions in this building. That guy is just the one lunatic in the corner of the room going, dude, this is the best quarterback I've ever seen in my 3 years working the Pac-12. We need to draft this guy in the first round. And that's who's talking to the reporter. So it's like, oh, first round buzz for Davis Webb. That's what's happening right now with Mills.
There will be over 100 players with at least some kind of first-round buzz.
Right, but the point is, whose first-round grade is it? Is it the GM? Is it the dude that's actually throwing the card in? Or is it just some crackpot who works like the regional circuit for this team and has no say in anything?
It's probably not the Bears saying first. I don't think that Davis Mills is going to go in the first to the Bears. Trevon Moehrig, best safety in the draft, top 1 on the PFF draft board. I really like him. 2-high guy, single high. Tayshaun Gibson's out for the Bears. I think he fills a need. It is unexciting, but the Bears are in this position where you just got to keep drafting good players. That's got to be it.
And it does feel unexciting, but it's also like he's a playmaker. That dude has led the nation in pass breakups for each of the past 2 years. He will make changes to that Bear secondary, which has started to sort of leak away the talent that made it such a good unit in the past. They do need to start throwing picks back at it to replenish that talent, and you pair him with an Eddie Jackson, that has the potential for some real excitement as a duo. It just doesn't feel exciting because it's a safety.
All right, Jason Owe, the Penn State edge, goes to the Colts at 21. We have pegged the Colts with a tackle. For the most part, they've got that big left tackle need. But we've also said a couple free agents out there that could step into a playoff caliber team, and I think they'd be happy with that. Owe is just a classic Chris Ballard pick, though, here at 21. Freaky athleticism. They like the length. They like the get off, and edge is one of their weakest positions.
Yeah, and they've also got a history of taking not just athletes, but athletes who have been like good, not great players. I don't know if it's a conscious decision of we will make those two things meet in the middle, right? We'll take the super athlete and the guy who's been good, and we'll try and make it mesh and make him play great up to the talent of that athleticism. Or if it's just, that's just the way it's worked. But they have this history of sort of targeting guys that are super athletes that haven't quite been as dominant as they've been. And it's hit or miss results. Like some of them panned out great. Darius Leonard, friend/enemy of the show. Some of them have not been so great. But you're right. This is a classic Colts pick.
Yeah, I think there's linebackers in this class too. Every time I see them, I'm like, oh, there's a rangy, athletic, long linebacker, perfect Colt. They can't just draft a linebacker like that every year, but the Colts have a type, and I think Owe is certainly in that type. In this fantasy world that you've created here, Sam, are they going to sign one of our friends, Russell Okung or Ali Villanueva, in free agency, or are they going to come back, draft a tackle? I still think they need to add receiver help as well.
I mean, I think they're going to look and see what the landscape is like in the second round. There's a watershed moment, the early May, I think. There's a mark where veterans that you sign don't count in terms of impacts for compensatory pick formula, all that kind of thing. So
Don't you hate when you put the emphasis on the wrong syllable early in the word and you can't?
That's like the way normal people say it. There's like an incentive essentially to wait until that threshold to sign veterans that have been out in this market for a while, right? So the Colts, they spent this entire offseason essentially playing this game of chicken at the tackle position, like waiting and waiting and waiting and trying to find this ideal situation where they get the most out of it. Maybe they're prepared to wait even further and hope that one of those guys is still there past that deadline of May. Then you can jump on him, sign him, not sacrifice a draft pick because of it, and still end up with like an Ali Villanueva as your starting left tackle, which is a fine place to be.
I think that's the play. I'm also wondering if the Colts they've spent a lot of years accumulating picks and building a really young roster. So the same way they were aggressive last year to go get DeForest Buckner with a first rounder, I wonder if they'd be aggressive to go get one player as well. Like if the other pieces are in place, if they would be trading up for a Darisaw or a Penei Sewell into 12 or 13 or wherever they might be able to get him. But Owe I like at 21. 22, the Titans get a corner in Greg Newsome from Northwestern, and then the Jets take Asante Samuel from Florida State. This is where we could just pretend you put J.C. Horn in one of these spots.
This is if I was going back and re-engineering the mock so that J.C. Horn made it into the first round. And honestly, I don't hate that he's in the second round. But if I was doing that, it would be this pick that he went.
To the Titans?
Yes, 22, Titans.
So you add him to Christian Fulton, Janoris Jenkins. I think being able to look, the Titans, they were making it to the playoffs for a few years, even before Tannehill caught fire. Making it to the playoffs because they were rolling 3 deep at corner. And I think that them getting depleted there without Malcolm Butler, without Adoree Jackson, without Logan Ryan now over these last couple of years, I think it's one of the biggest stories in the Titans, for the Titans. A team that is losing wide receiver 2 in Corey Davis. They're losing their tight end, and they've got all these other holes popping up. But the Titans getting back to a solid cornerback unit is huge. Greg Newsome helps from Northwestern, and then Asante Samuel going to the Jets. I think you've got the Robert Saleh defense. You've got, it's the Seattle tree. It's not perfect like that, but you generally think of these long press corners, but he's made do with different types of corners with the Niners. Does Asante Samuel fit what they're going to want to do with the Jets?
Yeah, I mean, Asante Samuel can be Jason Verrett, who played really well within that system last year. It's interesting. Asante Samuel is not in the same world as J.C. Horn in terms of athletic gifts, but I think he's a better player and a more natural player for today's NFL. And I think there's a pretty good chance he ends up being a better NFL player. I am a little bit concerned, as much as so recent history of certain positions makes you rethink things. Recent history of cornerbacks in the NFL, there is something to this idea of, look, if you're 5'10 and 180 pounds and you don't run a 4.2, you're just behind the 8 ball, right? Like, he's the same size as Troy Hill. Troy Hill's a really good player, but you don't want Troy Hill covering DK Metcalf.
Right.
Because he's given up 6 inches in height, 50 pounds in weight, and he can't run as fast as Metcalf. Like, there's nothing you have that puts you ahead of that guy when you're covering him one-on-one. Asante Samuel is dealing with the same kind of disadvantages. Now, unlike Troy Hill, I do think he has a couple of special traits that claw back some of that advantage. Like, he has a ridiculous ability to break on the ball faster than receivers. Like, he runs their routes for them a bunch of times. And he starts his movement so soon that I think it has to be tape recognition as well. I don't think he can do that just reacting to the movement of the receiver. There's not enough of a delay, which I think is actually a good thing, because it means that not only is he really good at that skill, but he's in the tape, to the point where he's reading it coming.
Putting it into action on the field.
But the point is he's studying enough that he recognizes that coming before it happens, which I think is a really encouraging thing for the NFL level. Again, that's what Richard Sherman has been so good at for years and doesn't get enough credit for because we think of him as just surviving on physicality and size and length. Sherman is probably the smartest cornerback in terms of tape and route recognition and play concepts and understanding what's coming before he has to react to anything. And that helps him a ton as well. So Samuel has a bunch of plays where you're like, he's moving before the receiver's even making his break. He's coming towards this guy on a hitch before the receiver has shown any inclination that he's throttling down, and therefore he's breaking up those plays. You need that if you're going to run a 4-4. He also has one play, which is one of the most impressive plays I've seen any cornerback make ever. It's a simple crossing route, an over route from the far side of the formation. And Samuel recognizes that there's basically nothing in his side of the field, no threat. So there must be something coming into it, right? If I'm just standing here doing nothing, where's the threat going to be? Recognize that it's coming from the other side of the field, and is basically just sitting in the hole waiting for the quarterback to get there in his progression. He does eventually, and it looks like the quarterback just threw the ball right to the corner. Easy play, gimme, right? But it's because he was there so far ahead of the play that he was basically just sitting there waiting for the quarterback to read the same thing. That's freakish ability to diagnose that kind of thing, and that's what his dad did. Like, again, it's the dumbest analysis in the world to be like Asante Samuel Jr. is just Asante Samuel Sr. But there's a reason that Sr. was able to succeed despite the same physical limitations, because he was really good at that stuff as well.
Something you said there that was important, right? When you talk about Richard Sherman and understanding route concepts, he has to do that because that's the system that they've run in Seattle, and then when he played with San Francisco. He's playing left corner. He's not just matching up man-to-man all the time. He's reading he's reading concepts. And when you play cover 3 variants 50-60% of the time, like Seattle and San Francisco have, you see the same route concepts over and over. There's only a few that defeat that coverage. And Sherman has been unbelievable at recognizing those, right? You're going to run a scissors in a corner. Like, they're going to try to put you in a bind as a left corner, right? And high-low you and make you switch off and, run an extra wheel route through there and all that stuff. So if Asante Samuel is good at that, that's a good scheme fit. Yeah. That's a better scheme fit than just like a 6'2" guy with long arms, right? It's the ability to see what's happening and how you're being attacked.
It's also really important for Samuel because he's 5'10", 180, and runs a 4.4, right? A guy like, and I'm not saying he doesn't have the skill set, but a guy like Caleb Farley doesn't need to be good at that stuff because Farley can see it later and has so much burst that it doesn't matter. He can get there anyway. He can lose a yard in the break because he's faster than you are to the ball, and he's 6'2" and long arms. He can get there at the catch point and break it up. Asante Samuel, if he doesn't have this skill set, is screwed because he's going to lose a yard in the break and he can't get it back because the dude's going to run faster than him and he's bigger than him, and if the ball is well thrown, he can't get back in the play. Asante Samuel needs the yard that he sees before the receiver does, or that he sees earlier than other people, and I think he has that skill. If he didn't have that skill, we would have some real problems.
So Asante Samuel to the Jets. Next 3 picks, Tevin Jenkins, the tackle out of Oklahoma State, goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the Steelers and the Bears feel like the most unexciting teams in general in this first round.
I mean, the Steelers are another one of those teams going into the draft kind of with a desperate need at one particular position. It's tackle, and there's already a few off the board, and now you're in this spot of, well, do we love any of the guys that are still there? Because we kind of need to make this pick. So, I mean, Tevin Jenkins feels like a very Steelers-y player, buries people in the run game, and they need to get a lot better in the run game as well. It's not just a pass blocker they need. So it feels like quite a nice fit, even if he's potentially a little bit lower on PFF's big board than other people have him.
They're the other team I think could talk themselves into a running back here. God. Really? I mean, their fans, and I don't know how much you connect the fans to the front office, right? But their fans are itching for a first-round running back. They wanted to do it a couple years ago. It's a hole on the roster. I mean, Benny Snell is the scheduled starter at the moment. But we obviously see their roster as losing. Justin Lane's a projected starting corner right now. Cornerback's a need. It's already difficult enough for them to match their defensive performance over the last couple of years. Their offensive line has massive question marks as they're going to have 3 new starters, 4 new starters there now. So all these different holes. Big Ben's regressing. and people really want a running back there for the Steelers.
So,
but I could see them talking themselves into, hey, we need this running game. We got to take pressure off Big Ben. We can't just throw the ball. We just threw the ball 70 times against the Browns in the playoffs. We have to run the ball. I could see them talking themselves into a running back.
A few picks earlier, I said there's zero chance the Miami Dolphins would take a running back in the first round. They're too woke a franchise. They understand what's driving all these things. There's no way they make that move. The Steelers, I think, could easily make that move. The Steelers could definitely look at their situation and go, you know what? When we had this great running game with Le'Veon Bell, everything was good. We were winning. That's what we need to get back to. And we thought James Conner was that guy, and he hasn't really been that guy. So we got to find a first-round running back. That's how you lock this up. That's how you secure it. You get the first-round talent. Failing to understand that the difference between the two scenarios is that your offensive line has fallen apart, and therefore you can't have a good running game anymore because you don't have the platform for it to work off. That's why I've given them an offensive lineman, a guy that will actually move that needle in terms of run blocking. I wouldn't be in the least bit shocked if they did what you're suggesting and decided that the root cause of the issue is the running back we have was no longer a first-round talent. Let's get another one.
Yeah, we'll see. It could be an interesting spot for the Steelers, or they just grab their center for the future. Jaguars at 25. One of the more intriguing picks for me, it's that I love the pick after the franchise quarterback. I always love that. You get the left tackle for the future, whatever it is. The Jets already made it earlier with Asante Samuel, so they go corner. The Jags' second pick here, you go Rondale Moore. And again, once Urban Meyer went to Jacksonville, I was looking at Rondale Moore, Kadarius Toney. I was looking at all of these uber slot types at 25 as a great fit for Jacksonville and what Urban Meyer has done historically. So Rondale to the Jags to play with Trevor, I'm interested in this.
Rondale Moore is just such a mystery to me because he's one of the most dynamic players in the entire draft. The guy runs a 4.29, 4.27. What did he run? But he's tiny, like 5'7", which is 2 inches shorter than people thought he was when they thought he was tiny.
True.
He was the best player on the field anytime he was on the field, but his college career peaked as a freshman, which in and of itself is ridiculous. Now, normally when you say that, it's a very bad thing because a guy peaked as a freshman, didn't get any better, got worse, and you're like, well, his freshman season wasn't that great, so what do we do with that? But with Rondale Moore, his freshman season was freaking incredible. It's just that that was the peak, and then he got injured, and there was the COVID year, which caused problems, consequently his role within that offense never really developed. He was always a gimmick player. He was always a guy that caught screens, and the entire system was built around just getting the ball in his hands. That's not going to be the case in the NFL. You just don't build an offense around one playmaker like that. So he's going to have to change and evolve, which is a massive projection because we haven't seen it. But just the sheer freakishness of his athletic ability, I think, is worth the first-round gamble to see if you can do that. And I think the Jags, because they have that extra first-round pick, are one of a few teams that it makes sense to make that gamble with. Because if Rondale Moore works out and you figure out how best to use him in this offense, he's a cheat code. I mean, he's just free plays that you don't get with other players, and that takes pressure off Trevor Lawrence, and it takes pressure off DJ Chark and everybody else that has to sort of win conventionally because Rondale Moore is out here just catching a gimmick screen or a jet sweep and taking it 50 yards. Like he's doing Tyreek Hill things, and that just changes the dynamic for everybody.
And then I look at how that group of playmakers has been built. DJ Chark is the number one. His contract's up soon. We'll see if he ends up being a long-term play there with the Jags. But Laviska Shenault, who they drafted last year, has that gimmicky player but with number one wide receiver potential, right? We don't know what Laviska's potential really is. Bring in Marvin Jones for a couple of years. He's your contested catch guy. Marvin Jones as a 3 is fantastic. And now Rondale Moore, who can play the early Tyreek Hill role, which was gimmick player, right? Maybe take some. I know scouts want to just put him in the back. He's 5'7". He's a running back. I would use him as a running back at times.
I would use him everywhere. I mean,
right? You put him all over the place.
People are comparing Jalen Waddle to Tyreek Hill. I think so. There's a projection there that has Rondale Moore having a role similar to Tyreek Hill. Again, it's a massive projection because he hasn't really done any of this stuff. but there's nothing on his tape where you look at it and say he cannot do those things. Like, he is as freakish dynamic as Tyreek Hill. He's the one guy in this draft, Waddle maybe, who has that kind of incredible quickness, incredible speed. He could be deployed in a similar way to Tyreek Hill. I'm not ruling out the idea that he could play on the outside and win against press coverage. We've never seen it, so who the hell knows? But I don't think you can definitively say there's zero chance that can happen. So there's a world where Rondale hits his ceiling, and his ceiling is insane. Like, his ceiling is Tyreek Hill-esque. Now, if I thought that was likely, he would be in the top 10 and we wouldn't be having this conversation.
But there's questions.
So I'm not saying, like, anytime you're saying this is the next Tyreek Hill, bad idea. You're not going to find the next Tyreek Hill in all actuality. But with Rondale Moore in particular, we should at least acknowledge that is in his range of outcomes. It's not a particularly likely one, I would say, but it's a factor that you should probably bear in mind, that there's a world where he's a better NFL player than he was a college player, and he was an incredible college player.
And the floor is Urban Meyer's the head coach and has used these hybrid types plenty of his entire career. The floor is you'll at least get use out of him, even if he doesn't hit that ceiling, which I think makes Rondale Moore more of a fit for the Jaguars at 25 than most teams. Like the Ravens at 27, anytime the Ravens get another playmaker that's fast, I think is a win for them. You know me and speed, but the Ravens and the Jags I think would use a Rondale Moore really well. The Browns at 26 taking Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah from Notre Dame. I love this as well. We just did a PFF Daily today. Forgive me for my audio. Had one mic issue. It'll be fixed for tomorrow's PFF NFL Daily. But go check it out. All the rumors about Jadeveon Clowney going to the Browns. I think that's a good fit. And the Browns continue to tick off draft needs in free agency before the draft so that they can continue to just draft good players. And JOK from Notre Dame just adds more coverage versatility to an evolving back seven.
Yeah. I think the Jags are in a good spot here, and I think the Browns are in a good spot, one position next. JOK gives them some like actual position versatility as well. I know he's a linebacker, but he's one of those linebackers that has the skills to match up with players in the slot. Now, you don't want him covering, a shifty slot receiver, but you can move him against running backs, against tight ends, against move players. He gives you that he gives you the sort of matchup, that idea of the only way you can stop one unicorn is with another unicorn. Like, he's not quite a unicorn, but he gives you the ability to cause matchup problems the other way as well, or at least answer matchup problems that are being posed to you.
Watching linebackers in college right now is painful. We've talked about this at the NFL level, how difficult it is to play linebacker in the NFL. And it might not be more difficult playing linebacker than against the Ravens, who sometimes you're in space against Lamar Jackson. Sometimes you've got Orlando Brown and 360 pounds of him attacking you at the second level. And then other times you're trying to run with Mark Andrews up the seam. JOK is one of those guys, just like an Isaiah Simmons last year, who has the potential to be an answer. It can at least handle all of those various situations, right? And that it is so tough to play linebacker in today's NFL. It's going to be a bit of an adjustment for JOK playing more in the box because he was an overhang, over the slot type of player for Notre Dame, but certainly has the skill set to, like you said, kind of create defensive matchups or at least answer some of those questions offenses throw at you.
He's kind of got Fred Warner skills. And Fred Warner right now might be the best linebacker in the NFL. So I'm not saying he's going to get there, but that's the pathway that he's shooting for.
And then I think you just copied our mock draft from last week when we went live on the mock. You went Landon Dickerson, the center of the Ravens at 27.
I like that pick.
Terrace Marshall, the wide receiver from LSU, goes to New Orleans down the street. Dylan Raduns, tackle to the Packers. That's not different. That is different.
That's new.
Anything in these next couple picks, Dickerson to the Ravens, Terrace Marshall to the Saints, or Dylan Raduns to the Packers?
I like the Dickerson pick. It's very unexciting for most people. Like, first-round center, nobody likes that. First-round centers, though, are kind of important, and I think
Except in Pittsburgh. They love it.
I think you don't appreciate their importance until suddenly things start to go off the rails and you don't really have one. The Ravens, more than any other team, I think, should probably have a pretty good handle on the impact that the platform and offensive line has on your offense. The Ravens, suddenly the interior started to fall to pieces, and therefore the offense started to fall to pieces entirely. The run game wasn't as potent. The pass game started to collapse off the back of it. The Ravens could get a guy like Landon Dickerson, plug him in, and immediately upgrade everything on the offense. Not just that one spot, but the knock-on effect. The run game gets better. The pass game with Lamar Jackson gets better. And, Dickerson's big red flag is the guy tore his ACL in the SEC championship game. But that's just not as concerning as it used to be. I mean, I never want to get to the point of calling an ACL a routine injury, right? Because it's a pretty traumatic thing to happen to you. But people recover from ACLs pretty easily these days. And then there's no concern that he won't be ready to go, week one, be able to get plugged in, be an immediate starter, and away you go. And his grades at the point he tore that ACL were ridiculous, like 91.3, just dominating people. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, I could see Dickerson going back into the first round, whether it is Pittsburgh, whether it is Baltimore, Saints taking Terrace Marshall. There's your potential wide receiver 2 to complement Michael Thomas. Anytime you push Traquan Smith, Deontay Harris down the depth chart a little bit, now you've got that depth again that they had when Emmanuel Sanders was there last year. I know it didn't work out for them necessarily, but it's a hole, I think, if you roll into the season with Traquan and Deontay Harris as your backups or your complementary pieces to Michael Thomas.
The Saints, if they have any sense now, should be looking at this and saying, all right, we've gone from Drew Brees to some combination of Tamus, and the days where we can just plug any no-name into this offense and be confident that Drew Brees will put the ball in his hands are gone. We actually need to start thinking about wide receivers and legitimate playmakers that can get open and maximize the impact of those quarterbacks, the ability of those guys to actually get their job done. So we need to start focusing on wide receivers. And Terrace Marshall, there's a ton of these small, shifty, fast guys at the bottom of the first round. There's not a ton of size. There's not a lot of guys that you think, okay, this is a big, powerful, fast wide receiver that can win as a true X. Marshall is. He's that guy. And I think he could actually end up getting pushed up draft boards whilst teams shy away from the smaller guys.
The one name I'm looking at, because we only have Kyle Pitts as a first-round tight end on the PFF draft board, but Pat Freiermuth from Penn State gets this baby Gronk moniker and all that stuff. And even Mike Renner said, yeah, he's got some baby Gronk to him. I just think the Ravens at 27, Saints at 28, Packers at 29, all might be interested in it because he is the best all-around tight end in the draft. He can run block. He's a pretty good receiver, good hands, good enough route runner. Ravens have done their best work with multiple tight ends. The Saints just lost Jared Cook, and the Packers, they do have a decent tight end room, but I don't know if they're just looking to the future there. I just think Freiermuth is a guy to keep an eye on. He doesn't make it in your mock.
No.
But I think there's a few teams where he's a good fit here. Packers go tackle. It does seem like cornerback or tackle's the play for the Packers, given where their needs and the value of the board is going to match up here.
I'm starting to get David Bakhtiari vibes off Radunz. He's starting to feel similar. In
North
terms
Dakota
of,
State.
Yeah. In terms of a player that I think has all the athletic ability to become a top-tier pass blocker at the next level, but I don't think has the power, and it might take him a little while to get there. Remember, Bakhtiari came in and immediately he was a pretty good pass blocker and then got better and better at that area each year and was not a good run blocker to begin with, and then again got better and better, but to the point where he's okay. Now he's an okay run blocker and maybe the best pass blocker in the NFL. Again, Radunz feels like he could take that kind of pathway where year one might be a little bit bumpy. He's a reasonable pass blocker, doesn't offer a whole lot as a run blocker, and then year two, now you're talking about a guy that can really hold up on the outside, and maybe he'll never be a great run blocker.
I got to look at that closer, your Bakhtiari comp there. It's not bad.
Okay.
I can see that. The
All
Packers. I had to think about that a little bit more. I like it. Let's wrap it up. 3 more picks here. Azeez Ojulari goes to the Buffalo Bills. The edge out of Georgia. Walker Little, the tackle, to the Kansas City Chiefs out of Stanford. And Elijah Moore. Yeah, I'm all in on Elijah Moore to the Bucs. That's the other place I think running back is going to be in play. 2 of these places. Bills.
Yeah.
Are the Bills going to look running back, or are the Bucs going to look running back? So, I've identified 4 teams: the Dolphins, Steelers, Bills, and Bucs, where I could see them thinking about a Najee Harris, a Travis Etienne, or whoever it might be.
I'm going to say 2 of those teams are too smart to do that. I'm going to say the 2 AFC East teams are too smart to take a running back in the first round.
You don't think the Bills would do it?
I don't. I think everything they've done, if they're sophisticated enough to know that you should be inviting teams to run the ball against you because it's the smarter way of playing defense and the less dangerous way an offense can hurt you, you have to be smart enough to not take a running back in the first round.
Counterpoint.
No.
The Chiefs drafted a running back in the first round last year.
Yeah, but they've never done – have they ever done anything
done all
that smart?
sorts. They're sitting there with all of these running backs just cycling in and out.
But that's not necessarily a conscious, smart decision. That's just the way that things have unfolded. The Bills consciously went in there and deployed a defense that invited
the
running.
Smart. You know what? The smart decisions the Chiefs make is when you ask Andy Reid, "Is this a passing down?" Everything's a passing down. They know.
But that's just that's
being smart.
Is it, or is it just like Andy Reid knows that Andy Reid likes passing the ball, and now he has a quarterback in Mahomes, so everything's a passing down? Like that's Andy Reid back in Philadelphia wanted to have this offense, but he would have been ripped to pieces. He was ripped to pieces for it. Why are you not giving Bryant Westbrook the ball more? Why are you taking the ball out of this guy's hands? He's your best player on offense. Andy Reid has always wanted to play this style of offense.
Which is smart.
Now the league has come round to his way of thinking, and he can just do it unashamedly. But I think that's different to the Bills, who ran completely counterintuitively and said, let's invite a team to run the hell all over us because it's a smarter way of playing defense.
So the Bills take Azeez Ojulari, 91.7 PFF pass rush grade on true pass rushes last year. You got to see some of the blocks he takes. Deontay Brown from Alabama is like 360 pounds. And there's a few plays Ojulari takes him on as a puller. So Brown's pulling, and Ojulari just pops him. So even though we talked last time about Ojulari undersized in weight from a number standpoint, but he plays big, good run defender, and just adds depth to that Bills defensive front.
Yeah, I mean, I said in the mock that they've been looking for like a Jerry Hughes complement for so long that they now need to start thinking about a Jerry Hughes successor in addition to finding the complement.
Yeah.
So either way, they need to keep swinging at edge rusher.
Walker Little, the tackle, again, there's just not a lot of data out there. He moves really well. There's some people that really like Walker Little. Renner really likes him, likes his potential, but this is a potential play. This is, to me, Walker Little going in the first round would be one of the riskier picks because he's just never played football at a high level.
Agreed, and I think the Chiefs are just in that box now where, I mean, they need a left tackle. Do they wait until the bottom of the second round to try and get it done? Do they make the phone calls to Villanueva or Okung or whoever it is and
they
say,
should be in that spot,
right?
Sure.
But if they're not, they're in this situation where they desperately need a left tackle in the draft, and they pick at the bottom of the first round, and a bunch of them could have already gone. So you basically just have to roll the dice on who's the guy you think can actually start day one as a left tackle.
The trouble, I think the reason why we're talking about the Colts making the call to those guys versus the Chiefs is the Chiefs are a little bit tighter from a cap space standpoint. The Chiefs can still make it work if it's like a one-year deal or void years or the whole thing. The Chiefs can make it work. The Colts just have a little bit more flexibility to call a Russell Okung or an Ali Villanueva. But yeah, the Chiefs getting Walker Little, it's a risky one to me. And then Elijah Moore, love this fit to the Bucs. I think if you're the Bucs, you look at the draft through two lenses, right? Am I filling any starting spots on my team? No. But you're making the two things you need to look at is what's the worst case scenario when I'm trying to repeat as Super Bowl champs here, and what's the worst case scenario and what's the future look like? So I think the two things always come back to if the secondary falls apart or if you just run out of weapons for your 44-year-old quarterback. So adding Elijah Moore as a receiver who could be a long-term play to help replace Chris Godwin if he has to walk at the end of the year. Moore could step right in and have quality reps because they rotate so many receivers in and out. I love Elijah Moore.
I mean, to me, any receiver like Elijah Moore is a luxury pick in the first round. But if any team has earned that luxury, it's the Bucs, right? They're defending Super Bowl champions. They just completed an offseason of run-it-back business where they got everybody. Literally the only player of significance for them last season that isn't back with the team is Antonio Brown, who's still available. Like if they needed to, they could bring him back tomorrow. I think they're waiting till the draft to see how that unfolds to see if they need him or not. So you bring in Elijah Moore, who might not have upside beyond just being a really good slot receiver in the NFL. But again, if that's all he is for the Bucs, you already have Godwin, you already have Mike Evans, you already have those tight ends, you have Tom Brady, who is pretty good history in terms of making slot receivers into something pretty special.
Yeah.
So it might be a luxury, but it's a luxury that the Bucs could make really good use of, and they don't really need anything else.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I know you don't love Elijah Moore in the first round, but you like it for the Bucs, which is fair. I think he's a slot, but a guy that can win short, intermediate, and deep with his speed, with his shiftiness and route running. Love that fit for the Bucs. I think they are destined potentially for a running back there, though. I would the Bucs' worst case scenario involves Jamel Dean, Carlton Davis, Sean Murphy-Bunting, injuries, lack of worst performance from those guys. So I think corner could be in play there too. The place that they invested a few years ago that helped get them to the Super Bowl, continuing to replenish there. Wide receiver and corner for the Bucs. It's a pretty good mock, Sam. Not surprising after last week. People complained that you had the final say a little bit too much when we worked together.
It feels more like a you problem.
It is a me problem. I conceded far too often, especially that Vikings pick. Man, that was bad.
Well, no, you should have conceded.
Forcing a tackle there. But, yeah, nice mock. Go check out the full analysis over at PFF.com. My mock will come out next Monday. We'll see how that shakes out.
All right, I'm gonna prepare to rip that one. I don't you're supposed to be ripping my mock to pieces. It doesn't feel like you've done a great job of that. I will therefore redress the balance by shredding yours next week.
Okay. Well, you made some good picks because we agreed on a bunch of them last week. Was it bad content? Should I go back and
fix
trash
it all?
you?
Mm-hmm.
Wait, what can I trash you for? Well, you got the right pick for Barmore with Minnesota. I would have taken Mac Jones over Trey Lance, man. That was terrible. Mac Jones to Denver over Trey Lance. That was the play. Anyway, tell Sam, at PFF_Sam, what you think of his mock draft. Is it the worst one you've ever seen? Let him know. And, let me know next week. So the rest of the week, we've got 2 more shows, Thursday and Friday, more draft content. Let us know if you are interested in doing that live mock draft with us on YouTube. I'm scared, but I think we can do it. And, yeah, we've got the draft show coming up, the entire draft weekend, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday all day. We got a recap show on Sunday, all on PFF.com. Sounds like Chris Collinsworth's going to be there for a little bit. Special guests, Richard Sherman, Al Michaels, and more. We have an up-and-coming NFL analyst, former NFL player, that we'll be announcing. He'll be a part of the show, but it'll be the entire team. Tapping into the entire depth chart over here, Sam, at PFF to break down everything on draft weekend. Anything else you want to say to the people to wrap up your mock draft episode here?
No. I mean, obviously it was a flawless mock draft, even if I slightly forgot about J.C. Horn.
Yeah. Be sure if you are a big J.C. Horn fan, it's at PFF_Sam. Tell him how much he just screwed it up. So that'll do it for us this morning. Thanks to everybody live on YouTube and in podcast land. We'll see you again on Thursday.